Bible upon your Jerusalem, stand and face Jerusalem. Blessing of the Sabbath. Barakatha Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Atalanawa, Hashabath, Bashalawam, Thawada, Aman. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, the Most High, in the name of Christ, that gives to us the Sabbath and peace. Thank you, so be it. Ariel. Sahai Ma'ad Asherai Makad, Psalms 121. Anya Harayim Ayanyam Ya Oh Harayim Mayan Yabawa Isaiah Yabawa Mayahawa Shai Shamayim Wa'aratiza La'a Yanathan Lamawat Regalia Yala'a Yanawum Shashamaka Hana La'a Yanawum Wala'a Yayashan Shashuma Yashirala Yahweh Shamaya Yahweh Tazalia I'll Yum Yawamum Hashemash La'a Hakaya Wayara La'a Balayana Yahweh Yashmaya Makal Ra Yashma Napasha Yahweh Yashma Hawalakia Wabua Aya Ma'itha I will Basham Yahweh Shai so what Amen.
Psalm 121. I will lift up my eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. Amen.
Amen. Shema Yashar'Allah, hear, O Israel. Shema Yashar'Allah, Yahweh, Allah Hayanawa, Yahweh, Akkad, Shema Yashar'Allah, Yahweh, Allah Hayanawa, Yahweh, Akkad, Shema Yashar'Allah, Yahweh, Allah Hayanawa, Yahweh.
Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. Amen.
Amen. Tapala Yahweh, the Lord's Prayer. Abiyanawa, Shabbat Shemayim, Kodash, Haya, Shamka, Yahweh, Malakwatka, Sabbath, Ratazawanka, Aisha, Salak, Ratazawanka, Haya, Aisha, Ba'arataza, Ka, Bashamayim, Betalanawa, Lacham, Yowum, Za, Wasalakanawa, Kababrathnawa, Kasalaknawa, Kababrathanawa, Wala'a, Habiyanawa, O, Nasayawan, Abo, Hawashinawa, Mara, Kaya, Laka, Hamalakwa, Waha'ala, Wahatha Pa'ara, La'ayolam, Amen.
Matthew 6 and 9. After this manner, therefore, pray ye, Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen.
Amen. Ha'aishara matazawaf, the Ten Commandments. La'ah, Yahaya, Laka, Alahayim, Akarim, Alpanya. La'ah, Daisha, Laka, Paso, Wala'ah, Ta'ibadam. La'ah, Talakwaka, Shamwa, Yahweh, Alahayaka, Lashua. Zakar, Ath, Hayawam, Hashabath, Lakodashwa, Kabad, Abiaka, Wa Amaka, La'ah, Daratazak, La'ah, Zana'at, La'ah, Daganah, La'ah, Ta'ina, Shakur, La'ah, Zakhamad, Ko, Asherah, Lara'ayaka, Amen.
Exodus chapter 20, verse 2. Salakia, 20, verse 3. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me, and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Amen.
Amen. Yeshabah, be seated. Barakatah Yahweh Ba'Hashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah Nathalanawa Par Yahagapin Thawada Amun, La Yahweh Ba'Hashem Yahweh Shai, Ath Yasha'Allah. I model upon you, Jerusalem, stand and face Jerusalem. Barakatah Yahweh, Hagadol, Rakawam, Abiyar, Wanara'ah, Alayawan, Malak, Shaw, Shemayim, Waratazah, Wakal, Dabayim, Kayayam, Wagam, Hamashiach, Mayahawa, Adawanawa, Ahabnawa, Hapalah, Yahweh Yahweh Shah, Zakarnawa, Yahweh, Baratazawan, Anka, Yasha'Allah, Izarnawa, Bana, Wasa, Yasha'Allah, O, Nanawa, Yum Yun, Aitha, Kayawumyum, Makwadam, Baba Kusha, Shalat, Mayaka Allah, Wahatazudak, Alahayim, La, Magunnawa, Rapanawa, Washamar, Alnawa, Baikor, Shalat, Harocha, Shal, Yahawashai, Lanawa, Lalamatnawa, Rabium, Kakama, Sabawana, Wada'ith, Shal, Debarka, Bahasham, Yahawashai, Thawada, Samyad, Wa'iwalam, Aman. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, the great, merciful, mighty, terrible, most high power, King of heaven and earth, and all things living. And also the anointed from Yahweh, our Lord, our friend, the wonderful counselor, Yahweh Shai. Remember us, Yahweh, favorably your people, Israel. Help us build and gather Israel. Most high, we beg you right now, like the days of old. Please send Michael and the righteous powers to protect us, heal us, and watch over us. Mainly send the spirit of Yahweh Shai to us, to teach us much wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of thy word. In the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you always and forever. So be it. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the law. Barakatah Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Atalanawa, Hathawara. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us light to see. Barakatah Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Atalanawa, O war, Lara. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the ram song to call the people. Barakatah Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathalanawa, Koran, Ha'ayel, La Korah, Ha'aim. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the olive oil to anoint Israel. Barakatah Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathalanawa, Hashaman, Zayath, Lamashak, Yasha Allah. Shabbat, be seated. Okay, Shah Shabbat, happy Sabbath, Israel. Shah Shabbat, peace and blessings to all the brothers and sisters watching on the live stream, listening onto the teleconference throughout the four corners, wherever you are. Peace and blessings from the Most High on the Shabbat day or the Sabbath day. This is Hayash Rala Kanas, located here in Germantown Avenue in Philadelphia, PA, where we teach the Most High's will, which pertains to his laws, his statutes, his commandments, the history, the geography, fruits of the spirit, as well as prophecies, right? So this is the 13th day of the first month, right? 13th day of the first month, according to our calendar. Tonight will be the 14th day. Tomorrow night will be the 15th day, where it says the 14th day at even, we're supposed to keep the Passover. So we are in the 13th day of the first month, going into all of the things that we now need to prepare for the Passover. So some of us are being a little bit wise and starting to slowly but surely separate out certain things that are fall under the category of yeast or leaven. Any of those products that we have distributed out in the emails and in the chat rooms with the technical names that they may have, but not just the basic layman's leaven. So we're trying to now get and start falling in line in the spirit of keeping one of the first of the year major high holy days on our calendar year. Okay, so today's Sabbath service lesson, we're going to be in the Old Testament, book of Judges. We're going to do both chapters. Shouldn't be that long of a Sabbath service. I think when we go through these two chapters, some of it is a lot of revisiting of the history and scriptures that we've already gone through in Numbers or in Judges and Numbers and Joshua, so to speak. And it's now setting the table for what the Most High would now begin to do with the nation of Israel following Moses and Joshua's departure as being the main focal points and leaders of our nation, and what types of troubles and pitfalls we kind of always seem to find ourselves in when we fall away and forget the covenant or the commandments of the Most High as it pertains to our prosperity. All right. So my name is Kahana Priest Samat. I'll be presiding over today's Sabbath service lesson. Give me 1 second here. Okay. So yes, we're going to be in Judges Old Testament, first 2 chapters of Judges. We're going to go through. Okay, I recall when we went through this before in Joshua, the 24th chapter. It kind of went into some of what we're reading here as it pertains to Joshua's departure. All right. So let's start off Judges chapter 1, verse 1. It says, "Now after the death of Joshua, it came to pass that the children of Israel asked Yahweh, saying, who shall go up for us against the Canaanites first to fight against them?" To fight against them. So the question was, now we had to go back, because now after Joshua's left, he's departed the spirit, departed, he set certain things in order before he left. Now we need a leader. We need guidance. We need someone to give us direction, govern us, right? And tell us what things we should do coming in and going out. So now once he left, he was that person that was now going to be the spokesperson for the nation. So now after he left, we had to go back to probably a prophet or a seer who would then be that intermediary and then come and let us know what should be going on. So in this case, we needed to find out which one of the tribes was going to go up and fight against the Hamitic nations at that time. Specifically, they're saying Canaanites. And like we went into before in the book of Joshua, sometimes it'll use a reference of the Canaanites or Amorites to now depict even all of the Hamitic tribes together collectively, or sometimes it can be that specific tribe that comes out of the Hamitic line, right? So we sometimes got to be careful when we read it, because it's the same thing for us when it says Judah. It could be specifically talking about Judah, or it could be talking about the kingdom of Judah, right? Same thing with Israel. It'll say the kingdom of Jerusalem, right? It could be talking about us collectively, or it could be talking about the northern kingdom, right? So we have to be very careful. The southern kingdom. Got to be careful when we see certain things worded in the scriptures to understand in context who it's referring to. All right. So I'm going to read this again. "Now, after the death of Joshua, it came to pass that the children of Israel asked Yahweh, saying, who shall go up for us against the Canaanites first to fight against them?" So which out of the tribes is going to go defend and fight and conquer and subdue the promised land that we was given by the Most High? It says in verse 2, "And the Lord said, Judah shall go up. Behold, I have delivered land into his hand." Right? So in certain cases, as we've seen, we're going and fighting against these Hamitic nations, these Hamitic tribes. It wasn't always that we were going to go and totally eradicate them, right? It was now moving closer and closer to now having complete control of the land that we were now promised. So again, as it reads, it says, I have delivered the land into his hand. Because we noticed from before or previous chapters, the Lord said that he would never fully rid them out of the land. It wouldn't be a swift thing. Go to the book of Exodus, chapter 23. This is Exodus chapter 23. I'm reading from 27. So Exodus 23 and 27 reads, it says, I will send my fear before thee, and I will destroy all the people to whom thou shalt come, and I will make all thine enemies turn their backs unto thee, right? So when it says, I will make all thine enemies turn their backs unto thee, there's two different contexts of turn your back unto thee. The Most High turned his back unto Israel out of disrespect and out of frustration, anger, and jealousy when we disobeyed his commandments. So it's like, I'm not dealing with you anymore. Right? In this context, it's not talking about that. In this context, when it talks about I will turn all thy enemies should turn their backs unto thee, meaning they will be running away. You will see the hind parts as they're fleeing from before you, because the Most High now said he would put his fear and his dread upon the nations. And once they hear a report of thee or see you, they're going to be afraid and begin to run away. So that's what the Lord said he was going to do to our enemies, and that he would be the one that would go and help conquer our enemies for us. It was not just going to be something that we would do out of our own. So we always had a self-reliance on the Most High. Nothing that we did, we can just fully claim that was us all by ourselves. It was always the Most High, from the land we conquered, to the enemies we defeated, to the crops we grow. All of that now comes from the Most High. That's why we even have our high holy days, right? 2 high holy days to commemorate it. The Feast of First Fruits and the Feast of Ingatherings, to remind ourselves that it's the Most High who has delivered and given us prosperity and food, land, shelter, so forth and so on. All right. So I'm going to read it again. I will send my fear before thee, and I will destroy all the people to whom thou shalt come, and I will make all thine enemies turn their backs unto thee. And I will send hornets before thee, and which shall drive out the Hivite, the Canaanite, the Hittite from before thee. So like we read in the class, the Most High can use different things as his vessels to wage war or punishment. In this case, he talks about hornets or insects that will go before them and then begin to drive out the Hamitic tribes, right? It says, however, in verse 29, I will not drive them out from before thee in 1 year, lest the land become desolate and the beasts of the field multiply against thee. So the Lord knew that everything had its perfect ecosystem, right? The way in which the Most High created the heavens and the earth, and how he began to now populate the earth with things, it was calculated when you read in Genesis, the 1st chapter, how the waters and the land began to flourish. Then he put the crops and vegetation there, then the animals there, then the people came. So it was a nice sequential calculated order to allowing certain things to be in the earth. So now the vegetation was going to be eaten by the carnivores, right? By the herbivores. And then you had carnivores who would eat some of these the herbivores. That was a whole process the Most High had. And it took 1,000 years to get each phase in order, right? Each phase took 1,000 years according to man years. So that's why the Lord says, I'm not going to drive all these people out of this land within 1 year, because it takes a whole process to make certain things become in a perfect ecosystem. So it's going to take a while for when these men are gone, right? Because the people go and cultivate and tend to the land. They go and eat certain cattle and animals. If left alone, cattle that normally roam the land where it'd be like maybe 5,000, 10,000 can quickly turn to 100,000 if there isn't anything to manage and tend to it, right? To go and kill and eat like the Most High tells us to do. So certain things had to be done in patience. It had to be done in order. So that's why the Lord says he was not going to drive them out in 1 year, lest the land become desolate and the beasts of the field multiply against thee. By little and little will I drive them out from before thee until thou and be increased and inherit the land. So as we read through the book of Joshua, as the children of Israel is now going in to conquer the land that was promised to them, it had to happen over periods of time, right? Periods of years that these things happen. It wasn't that you read it and you think it happened in one day. No, it happened in 1 week. No, this took a period of time. It doesn't always give you context of days, months, years. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. You just have to use wisdom to understand how the process happens. So this is kind of giving you that insight on how the Most High is now dealing with the tribes as they get their lot. They're now living there, but they still got nations around them. They still got to continuously go and fight and push them out, move them back, make them tributaries, do certain things, and that takes a process of time.
I mean, as the name of the chapter goes, judges. Judges are people who represent righteousness. And those are people that God has chosen to give people their right. And in the book, we're learning how judges are supposed to fight, right, to give people their right as their right that is rightfully theirs. So as you explaining it, how things supposed to be done, there's a way to fight, and the Most High is teaching us through those different various things. You don't just go and do things willy-nilly. That's what a judge represents. The judge represents to fight, give the people their right that is rightfully theirs. But there's a way how it's done.
Okay. Even when you look up the word judge, when you're reading the scriptures, come from the Hebrew word shapat, right? Judges or shapatyam, right? And it has different layers to the meaning as far as for governor, lawgiver, ruler, to decide controversies, to execute judgment, to condemn, to punish, right? A lot of these different attributes pertain to the word judge, right? So when we move forward in these chapters and you kind of get to the topic of Deborah, the sister Deborah, because I know it's kind of one of those things that people kind of go back and forth on as far as for her being a judge over the nation. I thought it was only men. Like, so you got to understand the context of the word judge and how it's being used in its proper order. But like Kahan said, that's what the Most High would then begin to do. You can look at Moses as a judge. Joshua was a judge. Adam was a judge. Yahushua is a judge. The Most High is a judge. He's the ultimate judge, right? So we always had people who was now raised up to be these figureheads to now govern and decide and lead and prophesy to the nations of things that needed to happen in its time, right? So this is when we're going into this now is the precursor to that, getting into these other leaders of our people or figureheads of our people in the book. But I'm gonna finish reading on. This is verse 29. I will not drive them out from before thee in 1 year, lest the land become desolate and the beasts of the field multiply against thee. By little and little will I drive them out from before thee until thou be increased and inherit the land. And I will set my bounds from the Red Sea even unto the sea of the Philistines, and from the desert unto the river. For I will deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and thou shalt drive them out. Thou shalt drive them out from before thee. Right. And I'll stop there and we'll probably come back to the last few verses in that chapter. So now let's go back to Judges chapter 1. Judges chapter 1. And verse 2 again, it says, and Yahweh said, Judah shall go up. Behold, I have delivered the land into his hand. And Judah said unto Simeon, his brother, come up with me into my lot, that we may fight against the Canaanites. And I likewise will go with thee into thy lot. So Simeon went with him. So so-called Negroes, Black Americans, as we know, that represent Judah, scattered throughout the four corners. They can be Black British or Black Germans, right? We are all those people that come from the diaspora. So now we see that the so-called Dominicans who represent Simeon, these are our brothers. So as it states here, Judah said unto Simeon, his brother, right? We're not talking about the man Judah and the man Simeon. We're talking about the tribes who are like nations that is described in the Bible. So when we look at each other out here in society, we don't look at them as, oh, that's them over there, and we point the fingers as they're different. We are kinfolk. We are brothers. So when we now have to identify ourselves in the Bible, when we speak to our brothers and say, listen, you call yourself Dominican, you Simeon in the Bible. So when they read the storyline and they say, oh, that's me, and then they see on the chart and they say, oh, Judah is them, and we brothers. So why we at odds? Why we jealous over? Why we just can't come together and now fight together like how we did back then?
And also, when we read it, says the children of Israel asked the Most High, right? So if they ask the Most High already set the order, how things gonna be done. And that's why they said Judah, because he's representing Yahushua in a way where Yahushua comes from the line of Judah. So when they ask, he's gonna give him the order of how things should be done. And he said Judah, but we know ultimately Christ comes from the line of Judah. He is the ultimate judge that's gonna bring justice to the nation. So now he's doing things in order, even though it's not Yahushua then, but he's pointing to the line just to give us a synopsis of how things should be done.
Right, Khan. So as we continue on, we're going to see that, as we are now dealing with those Hamitic tribes, right? And I'm not sure the context of Nightmare's question where it says why people think it's an Afro only thing when even Elam people can have very dark and black skin and straight hair, right? So, just to add a little clarity to it, to that question, at that point, we should never look to deal with appearance, right? Because throughout the scriptures, we understand that you'll have a tribe or a man or a woman that's within a tribe go and mix or sleep with or lay down with someone of another tribe, right? We understand the way the Most High deals with nationality or nativity is based on the seed of a man. The characteristics or the outer appearance sometimes can get jaded, right? Because we have certain people who look like Moab could be Israel. Someone could either be Esau, can be Israel, or vice versa. Someone who can appear to be Jake with an afro might not be Israel. They might be Ammon, or they might be Ham, or they might be something else. So it's not based on just the outer appearance. The outer appearance helps to a certain degree to get you to that point of conversation and context and asking the right questions. But it's not something that we should always rely on first off or second. It has to be just something to now start to spur the conversation. You was gonna say something?
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's a good point to bring out. Because when we read it and we do surface analysis on that scripture alone, we're quick to see appearance as far as physical.
Right.
Right. And in all cases, like you distinguish, it's not always on characteristics, physical characteristics. One is with the concept of the person, what he's saying, pay attention to what he's saying.
Right.
So what angle he's coming at.
Right.
So that you can fully understand what's coming out of this person's mind.
Right.
Right. To analyze it and say, oh, okay, I see where he's coming. He's coming from this doctrine. He's coming from that doctrine. Don't quickly see the person that you're looking at as the physical black, or you know what I mean?
Right.
But if you don't from the appearance, yeah, he's from the line of Judah, but you don't stop on that.
Right.
You gotta see the concept where he's coming from.
Right. Just to add on to what you're talking about, right? So, just on the appearance, the physical, the woman that was in Fresh Prince, the sister, not Hillary, the other one, the younger sister. Yeah, her. When I looked at on the surface, I thought she was Israel. She was Jake, but she's Elam, right? She's Elam. And her mother is Jake, but her father is Elam. But the appearance, you would just right off the bat and just say, yeah. And if you didn't ask the questions or do that diligent search, you wouldn't think that, hey, man, she's a part of us, right? Not knowing that she's not of that royal lineage. And what makes the distinguishing determination is not me, it's the Most High. It's the history, it's the law, it's the covenant that dictates and determines who can be a part of that promise, who can be a part of the person or the people who are going to receive that glory. To Pakwad's point, even within the nation of Israel, right? Someone can say, yeah, I'm Judah. You're like, all right, king, right? Cool. All right, queen. And they're now passing the first part, But then the second part, they don't fit. They don't follow. They don't believe the scriptures. They don't follow the commandments. They may not believe in Christ. They may believe in Muhammad. And you're like, oh man, what's going on here? Right? They're telling us about some other principles and some other doctrine that we should be following, and leave that alone. Where even though they're Israel, they're going to receive of the same fate and judgment in the end with the other people. Right? So again, it's layers to now dealing with those who are going to be deemed as the righteous. And it's just not just because you are Israel, do you all reach that same status. And let me clear up something. You know, there's a scripture, I think it's in Romans 12. I forget it off the top of my head, where it says, and all Israel shall be saved. Right? All Israel shall be saved. Right? Which when it talks about all Israel shall be saved, it means that all Israel are going to be the ones who are going to be the top nation in the kingdom. However, there's layers to even Israel in the kingdom, right? Levels and layers to Israel in the kingdom. Go to Matthew's real quick, the 5th chapter. Let me just explain what I mean by that. Matthew's the 5th chapter, and the 19th verse. Somebody can read that, Baba Kushah.
Matthew chapter 5, verse 19. And it reads, Matthew chapter 5 and verse 19 reads, whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments.
Stop. So now it says Christ is speaking about the commandments, the law, the prophets. He says any one of us out of our nation that breaks and stands on wanting to break the least of the commandments, read.
And shall teach men so.
And shall advise or guide and teach men so, read.
He shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven.
He shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. So that individual make it to the kingdom of heaven, but out of Israel, they will be regarded as the least, the base, at the bottom of our totem pole of great kings and queens in the kingdom. But read on.
But whosoever shall do and teach them.
Those of us who are doing and trying to the best of our abilities now to apply these commandments, and then do what?
Teach them.
And teach men so to say, no, you shouldn't do that. You should be doing this. Not saying that you could go and do that. No, you're saying don't do that. Or eat this, so don't eat that. Or wear this, or don't wear that. These are the individuals that will be what?
The same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven.
Those are going to be the great ones in the kingdom of heaven. So when people ask, well, if all Israel are going to be saved, what difference does it make? It makes a big difference, right? It makes a big difference on how you will be regarded or honored in the kingdom, right? Your name is going to have a different type of name than those who was Islamic, those who was 5%ers, those who was in the voodoo, those who was in the Santeria, those who was Baptist, Methodist, all of those who stood on that while we're here now, their names is going to be, in the kingdom, but they're going to be much different. They're going to be on a lower level than those who of us within the 1/3 of the 144 as well that are going to have great names, right? So it's like you're going to have two different factions of Israelites in the kingdom that's still going to be above all the rest. Right? So you're going to have Israelites who are on the bottom, who are going to know the law. They're going to be still given that. They're going to know the law, but they won't have that honor and glory as the rest. That's where the distinguishing factor comes in. And that's with Israel. So imagine if that's with Israel, what do you think is going to be with the other nations? Right? Elam, Ammon, Ham, Japhetic nations. They're going to be even way beyond or way below even those who are of the base of Israel, right? And they still will be ruling over them, right? But they just won't have that honor. So that's the methodology that we have, or the perspective that we move forward when we're judging in the book of Job. We're judging each other and the nations in these last days based on righteousness.
methodology of how we go about doing things.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes people all over the place and they really don't know why they do what they do. Even the doctrine that they come up with, they all over the place and they don't have no method. But you know, the key to us is we have a method of which we stand on, and everything falls right behind that.
Right.
Methodology is very important.
So that scripture that I was referring to, it wasn't in Romans 12, it was Romans 11 and 26 about all Israel being saved. And then that's what precepts with Matthew 5 and 19. So let's go back. Judges chapter 1 and verse 4 now. It says, and Judah went up, and the Lord delivered. Oh, man. So, like, just me 1 second. All right, so this is verse 4. It says, and Judah went up, and the Lord delivered the Canaanites and the Perizzites into their hand, and they slew of them in Bezek 10,000 men, right? So that's a lot of men that went to war, that fell to the two tribes, Judah and Simeon, as they went to go expand on the land of the lot that was prescribed to that tribe, right? 10,000 men got taken out that day, or during that period of time. Not say that day, during that period of time of the wars that they had with the Canaanites and the Perizzites, right? It says, and they found Adonai Bezek in Bezek, and they fought against him, and they slew the Canaanites and the Perizzites. So this is the leader or the king or the ruler of those Hamitic tribes that was in Bezek at that time. They slew of his men 10,000, but we're going to find out what happens with him. Verse 6, but Adonai Bezek fled, and they pursued after him and caught him and cut off his thumbs and his great toes, right? What you would look at as the thumbs on your feet, right? They got him and they cut those off of him, right? Now, why did they do that, right? Because that's kind of something strange already. We just go ahead and do randomly after you now conquer people. So it says in verse 7, and Adonai Bezek said, 70 kings, which is 70 kings, having their thumbs and their great toes cut off, gathered their meat under my table. As I have done, so God have requited me. And they brought him to Jerusalem, and there he died. So this guy wasn't just, just some little old king. He conquered 70 kings. When it talks about, and they had their meat under his table, meaning he had his foot over them. They was ruling over them, right? They had conquered them. And each one of the kings that he conquered, this was his little ritual that he did. He would go and cut off their thumbs and their toes. So this now was known. It was not known abroad of what they was doing. So now here it is when Judah and Simeon went and conquered Bezek, and Adonai Bezek was their leader, and he's trying to run away. They captured him, and they said, you know what? Go to Leviticus 24. Leviticus, the 24th chapter. Leviticus 24, and I'm going to read from 19, right? So this is what was in our minds as it pertains to law. It says, if a man cause a blemish in his neighbor, as he have done, so shall it be done to him. Breach for breach, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. As he has caused a blemish in a man, so shall it be done to him again, right? So this is what he was doing to these other kings that they conquered before they killed them. So now it's just in the spirit of things, in the spirit of war, it just makes sense that we do the same thing to you, right? This is what you reap. This is what you sown, you shall reap it. So now going back to Judges chapter 1 and 7, and Adonai Bezek said, 70 kings, having their thumbs and their great toes cut off, gathered their meat under my table. as I have done, so God have requited me. And they brought him to Jerusalem, and there he died. So it's not like he was reverencing the Most High, or that he was following their commandments or our commandments from the Most High all the while, and now he realized this what happens. You have certain of the other nations who will have some principles that we may have within law. Some of them, right? They may have some aspects of the dietary law, but not fully, where you may have the Islamic or Ishmael will say it's not good to eat pork, right? They have that as part of their one of their tenets or their principles. But they may bend it even to a certain extent where they make a case where if there's no other food available and it's only swine that's left, it is allowed to eat it. That aspect is not found in the law of the Most High. That's something that they added due to a weak faith, right? Or may have certain other principles that is good as far as for prayers or what have you. So now they realize, or Adonai Bezek realized, oh, I've done this. I knew at some point it would come full circle and it would come back to me. So they, God, have now delivered me into their hands, and this is what's going to happen. First, Ariel, was your hand up or you just stretching? Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to, when it says, I have done so God hath requited me. Required is just as recompense, just return or avenge.
Come on. Quiet.
Yeah, what I was gonna say is every nation recognize the power that is in this, but because the Most High is not dealing with them specifically as a nation, they cannot fully understand and use it. But they understand the power that is in the word of the Most High. So some of them will take the same Bible. That's why you have it in their own religion that they put together. They have it, but they will corrupt it. Right? They will use it, but in a corrupt manner. So they will use our own law, but use it in the same. That's our religion. Use the Bible. They use our law. They know it got power, but they cannot contain it. So now they use it. They can corrupt it. Okay. Put a corrupt version, but they don't corrupt the word of the Most High. But they have a corrupt version that they use, but still watered down from the Bible.
Okay. All right, let's continue on. Verse 8. It says, now the children of Judah have fought against Jerusalem and had taken it and smitten it with the edge of the sword and set the city on fire. Right. So it says Judah had fought against Jerusalem. Now, remember, the book were rewritten, right? During the times of Ezra, going into the Babylonian captivity had destroyed our records. So Ezra, at the time when he received the spirit to now dictate orally to the men that was going to now help us get back the records that we had lost from those wars, we had now known which names would become the names that we were dealing with at the time. At the time this was going on, it wasn't called Jerusalem. It was called Jebus or Jebusai because the Jebusites were dwelling there. So this is a hindsight writing in the scriptures. It's not like they're actually fighting against Jerusalem, the city that we know and love it to be. This was Jebus, but we know the future name would be Jerusalem, and Ezra wrote that there in the scriptures for the records that were rewritten when you read it. And I think first Esdras. Actually, let me get it real quick. I think it's second Esdras 13, maybe. Second Esdras chapter 14. Second Esdras chapter 14, verses start from verse 13 all the way to the end. Again, that's second Esdras chapter 14. Second Esdras chapter 14, verses 13 to the end on that history pertaining to that. So when they're fighting against Jerusalem, they're fighting against the Hamitic nations that are living and dwelling in the land, which we would know to be Jerusalem, but at that time it was Jebus, right? It says, and had taken it and smitten it with the edge of the sword and set the city on fire, right? So they had removed the Hamitic tribes from there, burned down their groves and their altars and certain things that was there, and then after time would have rebuilt the city to our liking and our fashion at that time, right? Fire does a lot of different things, right? It can warm you, it can purify your food, cook your food, but it also can purify a land so that it can now come back up in its right, holy and pure fashion. That's what's going to happen in the last days, right? Certain lands are going to be purified by the bomb, by the missiles that's going to get dropped, and we're going to have to rebuild them, right? We don't have to worry about, a lot of times people worry about like the nuclear radiation. That's why they build these bunkers and they under the ground and they doing all these things. They're afraid of these things, right? They got, a storage. They got storage of non-perishables. Some people, the elitists, and some people who have a lot of money, and even some of those who we may say middle class, they have been stocking up for a period of time. They got non-perishables that can last from months on to a year to hope that things clear up and they can come back out. But that won't allow them to escape the judgment of the Most High. The Lord tells you that he's going to be able to still go into the bottoms and the oceans and these caverns and these mountains or wherever they at. But for us, we have the Most High, Christ, and the angels. You think those who created the elements themselves, you don't think that the Most High and the angels can clean and purify all that radiation out and get rid of that? Do you think man's cause is going to be greater than the Most High and the angels? No. So we don't have to worry about those things. We worry too much about a lot of things that we need not worry about, right? If we put more of our faith in the Most High and less concern on what Esau and the nations can do with their technology and their devices, then we won't be clouded and jaded with a lot of things, right? We just have to focus on what the Lord gives us to focus on and blot out all that other stuff. So it says in verse 9, and afterward the children of Judah went down to fight against the Canaanites that dwelt in the mountain and in the south and in the valley, right? So it's not, one area. The city had different pockets and sections that we had to go over here and fight for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever and do what we needed to do there. Rest for a bit, set up a plan, a strategy, and then go where? We're going to go to the mountains. We're going to go fight over there against them for a period of time. Take the spoils, rest, burn cities, whatever, rest for a while. Now we're going to strategize and go to the valleys. So this is how things progressed. It just seems like it's a one-day thing, and then they went to the mountain in the south in the valley. No, it took some period of time. Verse 10, and Judah went against the Canaanites that dwelt in Hebron. Now the name of Hebron before was Kirjath Arba, and they slew Shishai and Aham, so like Ahamam and Talmai. So here it gives you that insight where Hebron would be a future name that we would have now taken that land and given it that name later on when you read in Samuel and Kings. Same thing for Jerusalem, right? Which we would call the city of David, right? Mount Zion, right? It takes upon it a lot of different titles and names for areas in that region. But here it says, and Judah went against the Canaanites that dwelt in Hebron. Now the name of Hebron before was Kirjath Arba. So in the beginning, that's what the name of the city was when the Hamites had it. And as we went to take it, we now renamed it Hebron. Hebron is still being known today when you look over in the Middle East, the so-called Middle East, in Jerusalem and Israel, you'll hear of those names of the past. Some of them still have the same name today. Verse 11, and from thence he went against the inhabitants of Debir. And the name of Debir before was Kirjath Sepher, right? So it's given a little bit of history of some of these names. Now, why sometimes this is really good when the Bible does this for reference, because again, sometimes a lot of times people not so in tune with the proof that's coming out of the Bible, right? So you may have in other nations' record, right? You may have in their records a land that may not be called the same name that we have it in the scriptures. So the Spirit has it where the Most High allowed the prophets, when they were now recording the events, to have things like that now outlined in the scriptures. So where you may be looking for Debir, or you may be looking at a certain map, or you may be looking at a certain record from somewhere else, and it has that name, I don't know what that is. Well, here in the scriptures, it does the correlation for you. So when you're seeing records from some of the Egyptians or the Elamites, for that matter, and their records about certain events that have happened, for instance, when we talk about Purim, and we're talking about Esther and Mordecai, or Hadassah and Mordecai, over in the land of Elam, they may have different records that give it from a different perspective, and they may use names that are traditional to them, and it's not here in the scriptures with the same name. Well, in certain aspects, it will give you that correlation. That's why it's a good geographical reference point that you can use to say, okay, now I can do that correlation. This is for the good historians. A lot of us have certain skills and certain knacks and certain tendencies that you want to dive into. For those people who are good history buffs and historians, this is good to start outlining and then doing that correlation and checking out certain history and bringing that to the forefront for the rest of us who may not have that skill. I see that. I'm not putting that though. No.
Everyone is here.
Right. So you may have that and then bring that and then enlighten the rest of us. That's why the body is beautiful, to have different brothers like Yahweh Kanan step up, and when he teaches, like how he wants to pull out the map, to say, hey, brother, make sure when you go there, bring out that map, do that history, and bring it forward, right? Or Kahun Paquad, he'll go through certain things, and he'll bring out a different aspect of certain things that he sees in the scriptures that now need to be enlightened to us as it pertains to inheritance, as it pertains to kingdom, and what that really means. So we all have these certain blessings and tokens and skills that the Lord blesses us with. We got to make sure we use them and bring them out to help the nation, right? And the other Kahuns that's young ones is coming up, the young lions is coming up, will do so in like fashion. So now let's continue on. Verse 12. And Caleb said, he that smiteth Kirjath Sepher and taketh it, to him will I give Aksa, my daughter, to wife, right? So Caleb, who was of the tribe of Judah at that time, he made out a reward and says, the one who was now going to lead the charge to take this area right here, I'm going to give my daughter to wife, right? Now, it may seem a little bit, in today's time, it might seem a little bit, I don't know about that. Well, how does she feel, right? She was just going to go with some guy she didn't even know. That's how they was doing it back then. Well, you got to understand even time and place. It was different back then, because back then, it's not like now where you have a lot of wicked men who do a lot of nonsense, following after the nations, following after practices and things that is not conducive to the law. These were law-abiding citizens to the Most High at this time. So if the man that was the Most High was going to put the spirit in to go and lead that charge, to go and conquer the nation, conquer the Hamitic nations for Israel, right? You would say that's a righteous man, right? And imagine a lot of the women, the sisters that will be looking at this man. Look at it today. You got some of these people who they make stupid rap songs, pants having halfway down their behind with a chain on their neck. Look how many women are standing out there to go and be with that man. He's full of nonsense. He don't got no wisdom in his mind, but they're willing to go be with that guy, right? You got these stupid TV shows, Married in One Night, or Shotgun Weddings. You don't even know this guy, but you wanting to go be with him. You have no idea who he is. So when you put it in perspective, it's not the same context of what it is. If you had someone who is reputable, who's a man of the Most High, is not something that somebody's like, oh, I don't want to be with him. You're going to have a lot of women fawning, wanting to be the wife of that distinguishable, reputable warrior man of Israel to go and say wife. So sometimes when people try to bash the Bible and say, oh, they was just now giving daughters and throwing women to them like they was just property. No, if that's the case, what you would say about some of these women would even be worse than what you're trying to put on the scriptures as far as for women now dealing with men, right? But that's a good another class to go into as we go into how marriage and how men and fathers gave their daughters to be married off, that we can dive a little bit more deeper into. I think I had everybody's hand up. You good? Y'all Kanan and Paquad.
Yeah, so I saw the movie like Coming to America, the number 2.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to give his daughter to whatever,
Mm-hmm.
because of certain ulterior motives. Because he wanted to give his daughter to Eddie Murphy's son,
right,
and so forth. Because of ulterior motives and stuff like that.
Right.
That's what this is in righteousness.
Right. Those ulterior motives was for alliances, right? They wanted to align the families to make them more powerful. You see, a lot of times the nations did that. Some of the times we did that. We kind of fall into that same vein where just to make an alliance with another nation, you would give your daughter, or they would give you their daughter for you to marry, like you read about with Judas Maccabees and the Apocrypha. That's what Nicanor, I think he wanted to do. He wanted to give him a wife to marry to kind of ease the peace and do certain things. But within our nation, with situations like this, it was different based on context. It was a valiant, righteous warrior man of the nation that went and fought to help and protect us, right? Quad.
Yeah, you touched on it. Today we in a different time.
Right.
Where the men's mind don't even know who they are all corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not even about the nation, the longevity of the nation, looking forward for the whole nation. But this was done for the whole nation.
Mm-hmm.
Because if something like that were to happen, then each person in the nation see themselves as, okay, I love myself, I love you just the same way I love myself. And it's about the nation. But today's society, our mind is so corrupt. Everything we think about is not even our thinking.
Right.
So that's why if somebody gives somebody a woman, they thinking in a worldly mindset. Mm-hmm. They're not really thinking on a higher level.
Right.
Even in the other nation, they would do it within themselves. Just keep it in the they would not marry you. Right. If there's a lot involved and they know that there's inheritance involved, there's longevity involved. They have the code that they will deal with you on a certain level, but when it comes to in the family, they keep everything in the family.
Kanan.
Oh. What's it? First time, like Saul wanted to give his daughter to David.
Mm-hmm.
Eldest daughter to David.
Milcah.
Yeah, what is that? Merab? Yeah. Yeah, he wanted to give his daughter to David.
Mm-hmm.
I think I see here Merab. The wife, only be thou valiant for me and fight the Lord's battle. Yeah, 1 Samuel 18 and 17.
It's funny when you read that when David was promised a wife and Saul took it back and gave him to somebody else, or gave her to be a wife to somebody else. And then when David rose up in prominence to get his throne, he said, go get my wife. And when you read the verse, the wife is being brought to David, and the husband is running behind her, like crying. But it's interesting because it kind of plays into the but it goes into the narrative when Yahushua was dealing with the woman at the well, and he was like, you've had 7 husbands, and the one that you got now ain't even your husband, right? Because going back to you, a woman being promiscuous, and that's your husband, and now you playing the field and going and dealing with this one according to the spirit, according to the law, you should have stayed with that one guy. But you don't went to this guy, you don't went to that guy, you don't went to this guy. So now you either playing the field or calling them side pieces and everything. The guy you with now, he ain't your husband. And she's like, I think this guy, I know all about my life. So that narrative and how it should have been or how it's supposed to be kind of goes into that. But again, like I said, we can go deeper into that, into a nice little fruitful class. So now let's read verse 13. It says, and Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, took it, and he gave him Aksah, his daughter, to wife, right? Sometimes they're going the wording and the lack of depth of the context causes people to think and wander off in their mind. He gave us like, all right, here, go. Nah, man. You don't think that this man would have had a ceremony, would have gone through the dowry, would have gone through different things for his daughter to make it? This is Caleb, right? He's one of the two that came out of Egypt, who lived to see what was going on in Egypt, and then now lived to see the promised land, right? Who was shown favor by the Most High, that his spirit was different from others. You gotta really use understanding on how some of these things go, and not be so harsh and fall into the scoffers of the Bible of how they want it to play out, but it's not really there. It's just wording. The English words sometimes lose the context of what it really is going into.
Right. So when somebody wake up and we know we're Israelite, we shouldn't just do like we read earlier, like surface. See things on the surface.
Yeah,
you got to go deeper into what you see based on righteousness of the scriptures, the concept of how the Most High is. You got to go deeper when you see things like that happen. It's like, oh, it's not just take her as a wife. If you understand now you Israel, you know the Most High is righteous and how he intends to do things in all righteousness. You got to go deeper into the meaning of what he's trying to do here, the way it's presented.
Con.
People might say, "Oh, what about love? If he loves him or not, or if he loves her."
And the key is, what is the love?
Right.
Again, because the love that we know today is put in our head. It's not the love that.
Right. It's emotional.
Yeah.
Right. It's not the rational, logical that will also tend to go with emotion.
Right.
Form of love. Right. It's not to say, and because I want to caution it. We are filled with more emotion as it pertains to love. Right, not the action of it, but just the thought of it, right? And then the actions of it are right there in your face, and you still have filled up with emotions of what you think it should be as opposed to what it is. That's where you get into all these different types of abuse and signs that you didn't see the signs, no, because you was filled with emotion. You wasn't rational of seeing what type of a person this individual is, if he aligns with a man that the Most High says I should be dealing with. And you get some guy who's out here, he's doing all kind of things, evil on the side here, but he's telling you certain things, and then he's yelling at you, he's beating you, he's hitting you, but this thing in your mind of what love is still clouding your judgment. And then he goes on for a year or two, and then you get to a point where it's like, yeah, I stayed because you was filled with, if you filled with the logic of the scriptures about what a man's characteristics are supposed to be, or for a man, what a woman's characteristics are supposed to be. Because on the flip side, men go through the same thing. They look at the surface and the aesthetics and they say, oh man, she looked like this. Oh, look at her body up. And then you so caught up on the trophy piece, or you so caught up on just that now you in hell in your house. Right? She going out all times of the day. She out here with these types of women and see him hanging out with these types of guys. And you're like, what the heck is going on here? You full of stress because you didn't see the signs. You didn't line it up with the law that says this is what a woman should be. Right? And that's the case. So again, for anyone, don't get caught up in these words. The scriptures is precept upon precept, line upon line. Here a little, that little bit where it says, and he gave her, you can now precept and correlate it to where it further goes into what would usually happen during a situation like that.
And he goes deeper to the conditioning that we saw with you. And then Master came in and bring you the Bible and said, love your enemy.
Right.
And he's beating you, but love your enemy.
Right.
So pretty much that's been carry on. And then now we become confused. We don't even know what love is. Because we lost identity. We don't know the scriptures. We don't know what love of Yahweh are talking about. So we confused.
Right.
It has been years and years. And that's what we see on TV. Oh, come on here. Then at the same time, the person is beating you, love your enemy.
Right. Right. So, and again, just on the wording, and he gave him Oxai's daughter to wife, right? In ceremonies today, in marriage ceremonies, right? There's a point where the reverend says, "Who giveth this woman away?" And the man says, "I give this woman away." Right? He gave her away. Now, at the ceremony, he's saying these words: "Who giveth this woman to wed this guy? I give her." And then she steps up. but it's not as harsh when it's being said there, right? Just because you're not reading the whole ceremony away, but it's getting to the point where the father who has dominion over his daughter is the one that's giving him over to this man to wife. Now, once that happens, once he gave her over, you know, that's like the next phase. She's not under her father no more. She's under that man. So he gave all his roles and responsibilities over to that man. And he saw fit that that man was good enough to take my daughter, right? So he knows these men that's going out there on my line, I don't got no men that's wicked and that's evil and that's all these, you know, filled with all this type of thing, or else you can't roll with me. You can't roll with me. I don't want, if like say we're going out to camp and we rolling together as a body, I don't want to have nobody in my camp or in my group that's out there selling drugs and is out there gang banging, right? Because we know that that energy could come back on us. We out there teaching and somebody walk by and like, yo, ain't you that dude that robbed my mother the other day? You're like, what? You did what? Right? And they're like, yo, he right here. Now we out here trying to fight and defend this nonsense that he dealing with. And we don't need to be dealing with that. We don't want to put the Most High's name in a bad state. They be like, yeah, Israelites out be gang banging. No, we ain't having nobody rolling with us like that. Othniel was not rolling like that with Caleb and the men that was in the army. So this is the mind state of the type men that we was dealing with back then, right? So let's read on. So you can link that, because this, again, some of this that we're reading in chapters 1 and 2 is a rehashing of what we read already. You can link that with Joshua 15. It talks about the same thing. Joshua 15, and you can start at 13. Joshua chapter 15, verses 13, all the way down to 20, because it's going to be everything that we're about to read over the next several verses is the same thing in that chapter. It's just a rehashing. So again, Joshua chapter 15, verses 13 down to 20. All right, so let's read on verse 14. It says, and it came to pass when she came to him that she moved him to ask of her father a field, and she lighted from off her ass. And Caleb said unto her, what wilt thou? And she said unto him, give me a blessing, for thou hast given me a south land. Give me also springs of water. And Caleb gave her the upper springs and the nether springs, or the lower springs, right? So this is what, you know, as a father wants to look out for his daughter. He's like, okay, Dad, can I have this over here? Sure, you can have this. However, look at what happened in the preceding verse. It says, and it came to pass when she came to him. Who's the him? Othniel, her husband. It says that she moved him to ask of her father a field. So she had to work that out with her now husband, right? It ain't like sometimes you have it where you have, that's my dad. I can just go to my dad for any old thing and just violate the order and the union that you have in your house. No, they discussed that amongst themselves. Hey, look, I want to go ask my father if I can have that area over there and that area over there. What do you say, babe? Why not? Okay, let's do this. And they went and asked of Caleb, and of course, Caleb obliged. But it shows order within the household. I'm gonna read it again. I see your hand. And it came to pass when she came to him. Remember, Othniel is being given to Oscar. When she came to him, that she moved him to ask of her father a field. So that man now went to Caleb on behalf of his now new wife to receive these different types of land. It's order.
Keep in mind too, one might say, why is this fighting and get land? It's resources. And that's why in Deuteronomy 32 and 8, he says, when the Most High established things, established after the border of the nation of Israel. Land at the time is one of the biggest resource you can have, because our agrarian society, that's how you eat, that's how you plant food, that's how you, and the Most High always tell us to go and work the land, right? And make it fruitful, make things multiply so you can feed yourself and the people around. So it makes sense for her to ask him, because he's going to be responsible to have people to work the land. So they got to be in agreement. Are you agree with that? Do you have enough men you know, to work the land to make it. So you're not just gonna have the land and just have it sit there.
Right.
Not counterproductive.
Right.
All that has to be agreed upon if you can take on that responsibility.
Right.
Because the man gonna be working the land.
Right. And it goes into inheritance, right? So now when that's given to you and you now own it and you have children, they inherit that piece of land. Right. So we got lots as far as for different tribes, but even within the tribe, having land, you a Judite living in the land of Judah, you have certain lands in your own country, right. Even in your own region. You got brothers from out of the tribes now who, or sisters, may have family that lives in the Caribbean or in South America or somewhere else. And you'll hear them say, yeah, I still got land over there. My mother and them had land. My dad and them had land. Sometimes every year or two, I got to go back over there and check on the property, right? My cousins is over there or such and such is over there, but that's our land. So I go back there and, you know, I want to set foot on my land and see what's going on with my investment, my inheritance, right? Judah is out of all the tribes, which the Most High set Judah up as the head tribe. Judah is the one out of all tribes who normally doesn't have that say. All the other tribes have that say when they come to Babylon, right? That I got land or my family's still over there. We got this acre, we got that, whatever the case. Judah is the one that does not have that say so to an extent, right? Pequod then.
Even when you here in the US, if you have a chance to get a piece of land, you got to do it. It's more like a psychological thing, put you in the perspective of, right. You know, ownership and the head and managing.
Right.
It's like it's weird to be on your own land and then strangers occupy the land and you own nothing.
Right. Right. Let me just clarify before you make your point. I say Judah doesn't have his own land. I'm talking about in the perspective where right. All these other tribes view the country that they come from, like Puerto Rico for Ephraim, that's their homeland. Right. Even though it's traditionally not their homeland, but they view that as their homeland. Benjamin, Jamaica, that's their homeland. Some from Trinidad, that's their homeland. You from Colombia, that's your homeland. So they now have still inheritance there from family members, right, that are still left there. Judah doesn't have that. What did you going to say? Yeah, I still got land back over there in the land of Ham when I was taken from. No, you don't. Right? Not to the same extent on how the rest of the tribes do, where you can go back there and check on your land. Now, is that 100% accurate? No, because you're going to still have, some of Judah who have remnants that's still over there in different areas in West Africa, whether it be Ghana, Liberia, certain areas over in that region, that their families may have land. But the majority of us don't know who we are and don't know what properties over there like those other tribes. Those other tribes do, like Yao Kanan, Upayo is one of them, who's like, yeah, we still got land over in Jamaica, right? That's our own. That's in the family name, right? So that's why when we're looking at them going and taking lands and can I have that field? That's my field now, right? It only now changes hand if I sell it, right? Or if something happens and now I have to give it up while I owe somebody and now I use that for collateral to now pay off a debt. And then in the year Jubilee, now it's over there, right? So that happens, you know, but the case is like Quad is saying, land and inheritance and us having lots of plots of land was important.
I was just going to say, like, you remember how back our Levitical priests never had their own land.
Mm-hmm.
They would have to come and live under us because they were our priests.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how the scepter has changed from the Levitical priest unto Judah now because of our king. And it makes it seem like you could see it in a bigger picture, like you just explained. Everybody else has their land, but Judah don't have their land. So it was just like similar putting that together like that.
Mm-hmm.
Connect with what you're saying. Judah is the head tribe. Judah is kind of put in a predicament like Levi was put in. Like you join to the Most High now, you got to go work and teach the word and take the lead and teach the people. Don't occupy yourself with land because pretty much you're part of my superstructure to get things going, right? Just like the priests. The reason why priests they didn't have land they joined into the Most High. They didn't need a part because like they pretty much was the mediator between the Most High and the people. So you gotta go and fight for the people, showing the words. And so you don't have time to occupy yourself with the land because, like I said, to have land, you gotta work it. But you on a different work. You doing a different work. So don't worry yourself with that, right? Let the people bring the tithe so you can keep my work going, right? In part because you pretty much working with me directly. I mean, it's kind of sort of working with me directly. So keep doing that job and don't worry yourself with working the infrastructure. Because my superstructure, and then teach the whole nation. So Judah kind of like in the same predicament now in the last day. When Yahushua is coming, now Judah got to retake the lead and get the work done.
And you could just write down 1 Chronicles 5:2, in reference to what we're talking about when it says Judah is now become like the head tribe. It's 1 Chronicles 5:2. It says that Judah prevailed above his brethren, right? But the birthright was Joseph. So this just goes into now Judah as that lawgiver, like it talks about in Genesis 49. And he's that, and you can see it, when you look at in the world, Judah, the tribe of Judah is that tribe that kind of leads the way for a lot of things, right? Not that none of the tribes don't have, zealots and people who want to do certain things or who are intuitive to come up with different skills. Benjamin, Ephraim, Levi, everybody has their flavor. But Judah is that one that now kind of leads the charge for everybody. And it just inherent that they all fall in line spiritually, right? Every tribe falls under in line and follows behind Judah based on how the Lord prophesied that would be the case. First Chronicles chapter 5:2.
Case in point to what you bring up, you can see how Martin Luther did everything he did, but he fought the wrong fight, and everybody benefited. Mm-hmm. Even the other nation, they benefit because of his work. Yeah. So everybody now can talk about rights and things like that. It was all because of him. Mm-hmm. But he fought the wrong way. His fight wasn't rooted in the scripture in the Christ-like manner. Right. It was more like a dabble and this and that in the world, and the word was taught the way the white man teaches it and everything. So it was all convoluted. But yet he did a lot of things that a lot of people benefited from.
All right. So now let's continue on. We have verse 16. It says, "And the children of the Kenite, Moses' father-in-law, went up out of the city of palm trees with the children of Judah into the wilderness of Judah, which lieth in the south of Arad, and they went and dwelt among the people." So who remembers what the city of palm trees was? City of palm trees. I'll let that sit there. See who can remember that and let me know. If not, I'll give you the precept in a few. Right? It says in 17, "And Judah went with Simeon, his brother, and they slew the Canaanites that inhabited Zephath and utterly destroyed it. And the name of that city was called Hormah. Also, Judah took Gaza with the coast thereof, and Ascalon with the coast thereof, and Ekron with the coast thereof." Right? So they're now moving and going to different areas and taking certain lands. When it says Gaza, it's almost like when you hear today the Gaza Strip, right? Along the coastline, right? So here is continuing with the progression of us taking land. Verse 19, "And the Lord was with Judah, and he drave out the inhabitants of the mountain, but could not drive out the inhabitants of the valley, because they had chariots of iron." So at that time, they was going and they could conquer here and take them out and destroy them, burn the land, now cultivate the land. But then they came to the valley and they noticed that these guys over here, they got some doggone weapons, man. They got some, that's like going to somewhere and you got machine guns, but then they coming with tanks. And you're like, oh, this ain't going to be that easy. So you got to fall back, right? Sometimes you got to learn from a loss, right? You got to learn to go and re-strategize a way of now coming and conquering. And sometimes the Most High just doesn't give you everything. It's like a child, right? A parent just doesn't always just give a child everything he wants. Sometimes you got to hold back. You got to hold back and see how they act when something is not given to them. Will they still trust you? Will they show restraint? Will they now be patient, right? And then later on, I give it because you now built up these fruits of the spirit in you, and yet not become spoiled to think that you just deserve everything without putting it in any effort or building yourself up to when you get certain things, you can deal with it. That's what happens sometimes. We get things when we want them, but then when you get them, you can't deal with it and you lose it because you didn't have the fortitude of the mind to manage and deal with certain things that come your way. What's that scripture that you like always quote? I think it's in Psalms. Paraphrase it when it talks about don't give me more than don't give me poverty, but don't give me like riches. Exactly. Proverbs, see if you can find that too. And let me know when you got it. So it says in verse 20, and they gave Hebron unto Caleb, as Moses said, and he expelled thence the 3 sons of Anak, right? So you read about this. We read this before in the book of Joshua, the 15th chapter, 13th verse, when they went and they dispelled to deal with the Anakims, right? Anak and the Anakims. When you read the history, these were Hamitic people that were like giants, very tall, statured men, right? So this is where when you hear the word giants, for those who are listening newly about giants in the Bible, is not talking about these, made up type figures where they're 89 feet tall and they're like angels. No, these are just like Manute Bol type people where it's a whole bunch of them that's like that, right? Imagine here we are, we going to a basketball game and we on average about 6'5" and under. And we go to the game and you see everybody 7 feet and above. You like, even the point guard, you like, dang, what the heck? Are we gonna defend? All they gotta do is just do this. Can't do much against them, right? So that's kind of how when the men went to go fight and seen them, they saw them as what they looked like. Yo, all these guys is big, man. These guys is like, John, how are we gonna fight against them? So, but the Lord was with us, and he said, don't worry about their height. Don't worry about what they got. I'm gonna come help fight you. So in this instance here, when they went back then, during the time that the Lord prophesied through Moses, he gave them the land that the Anakims dwelt in, right? And that's another good class to go into. Somebody that's out there who's interested in it, write it down and ask that for one of the class as far as for going into the storylines about the giants, going into Goliath, going into the before and after the flood and all these different names. There's different names for these giants. It just wasn't just giant. We called them by different names. Even the other nations called them by different names. So again, that's another class to go into to bring some context.
You bring out a point about sometimes you gotta know where you are in the fight and how to, like, you bring an example with the parents with the child.
Mm-hmm.
What we always gotta remember, what scripture is, I forget what the scripture is. Everything happens for good to those that love the Most High. As long as we in the path of doing the right thing, anything that we do, whether we understand it or not, when we're in a situation, we gotta learn from that situation. We gotta move back, and sometimes it's about faith. Sometimes it's about a weakness that we have. Right. Sometimes we gotta, like the Anakim that's coming. Now it's about faith. Now you see that you can defeat them. Now you gotta rely on faith. Now you gotta build, get your faith up.
Right.
So it's a whole different aspect strategy on how to grow in the Most High, so the Spirit of Christ can fully, rely on stay in you, and then now you become, that Christ-like faith.
Yeah, exactly. You find that verse, Yahukanan?
Yeah, Proverbs 30, 8.
Proverbs chapter 30, verse 8. If you could read that, Bible Kushah.
Proverbs 30, verse 7. It says, two things have I required of thee. Deny me them not before I die. Remove far from me vanity and lies. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with food convenient for me, lest I be full and deny thee, and say, Who is the Lord? Or lest I be poor and steal and take the name of my God in vain.
Right. So that's a beautiful perspective that the brother had, because that was one of the warnings that you read about in Deuteronomy, where the Most High warned us to never forget him in our prosperity, where you may receive certain riches or certain things, benefits, and then after a while you get high-minded and prideful and you say that my hands got me this or I did this, and you forget the Most High, who's the one who's the author and the ending of everything that we see. So in this context, it's like, look, don't give me poverty, right? Where I'm out there, I'm like a beggar, I don't have much. Or don't give me riches, where if I might get so much that I lose sight of what's real or what's most important. So let me be just somewhere in the middle. I'm a balanced life. Well, I have enough that's going to be sufficient for me. I don't need all of that over there, or I don't want to be over there. Just give me something to meet them. Just the principal things that I can go on and live a good life. And I always have you in my sight. That's the key, right? And that's what you see a lot of times with people who get money, people who do become famous and rich. They don't have that balance. So because they don't have that balance, and now they've been given so much at a short period of time, they can't manage and maintain, or they was under the false illusion that would have given them peace, right? This is what gives you peace of mind, but that is a very short-sighted temporal thing, and then it causes people to now still grasp at straws. And now you're grasping at pills and medicines, you're grasping at the bottle of alcohol and wine, you're grasping at the flesh of carnal and dealing with promiscuity. And there's a lot of things that you now grasping at straws to find peace, and it ain't there. It's always here. And the fear that the brother had was, I don't want to get or have anything taken away from me that's going to make me lose sight. Right? Yawakunan.
Yeah, in the Jamaican newspaper recently, this man steal his lady pocketbook and somebody went up to him and stabbed him. Man.
Say it again?
No, in the Jamaican newspaper recently, this man stole his lady pocketbook and somebody went up to him and stabbed him, man. It's terrible,
Yeah. I mean, that's what happens, right? When poverty set in, or when times get hard, they say your back's against the wall. It's a dog-eat-dog world, right? So you just go out there and you start robbing and stealing from your own, right? You start, looking to, at any means necessary, you got to eat. So I'm gonna go and eat, and if it may mean my neighbor, my brother, my this, so be it, right? But even in that, like, if you had this, you would use wisdom on how to go about doing it. But if you had this, you would rely on the faith, like how when Elijah and certain men or certain people were taken care of by the Most High, where he fed them and he took care of them, he clothed them, he housed them, right? He gave them guidance on what to do because they were doing the right thing, right? When you're not doing the right thing, Most High turn his back and you left to fend for yourself until you repent and you come back to kind of see the error in your way, repent from it, and then try to understand what is my course, what's the right course.
And it's all with it's all come with the balance. That's why the Most High wants us to work.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta work. If somebody hate work, that's a breaking the law. If you don't like working, that's breaking the law, because that's pretty much it's a law, because the Most High don't want you to stay there, remain idle, and not work. And it's the same way too. The people who's back against the wall, they put in condition where they don't create jobs, and they put in situation where they get locked up and they can't get jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Society should have a way where they can work so that they don't go and rob people, because they're gonna have to eat regardless.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna have to, because if they exist, they gotta eat. So if they've been put in a situation where they can't get jobs, then what do you expect them to do? Mm-hmm. It's like it's a systematically you create that poverty. Right?
Yep.
So that's why the Most High say you gotta work. You gotta work, and so that you can. The men that don't work can eat. If you don't work, you can't eat. Right? So working is, and that's one of the reasons why the Most High put emphasis on 6 days. That's how much importance people don't work. So you work 6 days so that you can feed yourself and you can maintain yourself. But in the 7th day, you rest. You know what I mean? So you rest. So that's a whole different class too.
Mhm. So in the New Testament, it's like an infidel.
Right, because it's like, for example, even on the Sabbath day, right? If we not working for 5 days of the week, and then when Sabbath day comes, they say, "Yeah, rest." You've been resting all week. Yeah, what are you resting from? Because the most I work, the rest accompany work.
I was working hard all week.
Right, and then you gotta rest because the Most High did this. Like, you went back and he see his work that he did. He said it was good. But everything he did, he just sat back and see it was good. And then on Saturday, he went. He was working. I mean, through the angels, but he was doing work.
Con, you find it?
Jericho.
Jericho. There you go. City of palm trees is Jericho.
Deuteronomy 34.
Con, Deuteronomy 34:3. I also see, I think a sister had that, had it as well on the chat. Yeah. Yeah. That's wild. 34:3. City of palm trees. It's like was like out in LA. When you go out in LA, you have all the palm trees all over there. You can say that's like city of palm trees over here in Babylon, right? So now reading on, we had Judges 1 and we have verse 22 now. So like we had 21. It says, and the children of Benjamin did not drive out the Jebusites that inhabited Jerusalem, but the Jebusites dwell with the children of Benjamin in Jerusalem unto this day. And the house of Joseph, they also went up against Bethel, and the Lord was with them. And the house of Joseph sent to describe Bethel. Now the name of the city before was Luz, right? So that goes all the way back to when you read in Genesis 28. I think 28 and 19 as far as for Luz being referenced in the Bible as one of the old names. So it says here, and the house of Joseph sent to describe Bethel, what does it mean to describe? It's an interesting word you don't normally hear. We have verse 23. And the house of Joseph sent to describe Bethel. Now the name of the city before was Luz, right? Describe. To overtake.
Yeah, I'm going to say overtake because it says in the house of Joseph sent to describe Bethel, to take it, and then they named it the city before.
Now, here's the hint. The hint is in this next verse. Watch this, verse 24. And the spies saw a man come forth out of the city, and they said unto him, show us, we pray thee, the entrance into the city, and we will show thee mercy. Right? So here it is when it says in the house of Joseph, they sent to describe. So they sent what? Spies out. So what do you send spies out to do? To gather information about the size of the city, how many soldiers they got, how big it is, how many they got women there, they got cattle there. So they're going to now look at and see what's going on in this city called Luz, or we know it to be Bethel today, right? So that's what was going on. That's what that word means, to go and to spy out, to survey. This is like what they call recon, right? You're going to go do a reconnaissance mission, right? So they went to go do this. So then when they go there, they seen a man that came out of the city, and they said unto him, show us, we pray thee, the entrance into the city, and we will show thee mercy. So based on the context of the verse, right? This just wasn't a casual conversation. He's walking by and they're like, yo, show us the entrance to the city. We'll show thee mercy, right? And he's like, nah. When he saw them, right, He knew right off the bat something was up, right? Who these guys? They not from our city, right? So they now apprehend, like, listen, show us where the entrance to the city at, right? And we're going to show you favor. We're not going to harm you. We're going to, take care of you. Same instance that happened in Joshua in the beginnings of the book of Joshua. With who? The harlot, Rahab, right? She went and she was shown favor when they went to spy out the land back then. And what happened? They showed favor to her and her whole family, right? See, Israel, we was straight up. We was up, we wasn't just, like Esau and them do. Because, Esau do the same thing and then wipe out your whole family, right? He'll ask you for something and say, yo, don't worry about it. I'll pay you. I'll take care of you. And all of a sudden you go and do it. And then you're like, hey, man, thanks. Okay. And all of a sudden, pop, pop, you wind up dead or you slaughtered, right? And everything that you got taken. You like, dag, man, your word didn't mean nothing. Like, what the heck is going on here?
That's pretty much what we're reading right now, bringing up to speak to today's time. This is foreign policy and intelligence, just like the CIA is doing it today.
Right.
So that's in the Bible. So that's like people don't understand the Bible, that everything is in the Bible. Archaeology is in the Bible. Medicine is in the Bible. Biology is in the Bible. Science is in the Bible.
And as you bring up that point, right? And I made this comment, I think a few months back. I don't know, it was at a new moon or whatever. As far as for how Israel went out right now, did reconnaissance. And he's like, it's kind of similar to what the CIA does or whatever. But I would say it's not like the CIA, because what the CIA does is cause and stir up propaganda.
No, on the righteous.
Oh, on the righteous, yeah, right. But and I would say this much, because I don't want to get it confused when people hear that this is like where the CIA, because the CIA, they corrupt in what they're doing for their own thing. Now, in this situation that we're reading here, Israel is not looking to go and like going into Moab's land, so-called Chinese, or going into Ammon's land, so-called Japanese, according to the Bible, or going into the Japhetic regions, right? Or going into Esau's region. They're in their own promised land that the Most High gave them. The Lord said, that's your land. You got to go conquer that. Remember when we was reading in Joshua came back and was like, yo, the Most High gave you the land. Why y'all not going and go take it? It wasn't that it was just going to be given to you. You got to go fight. You got to go to war. You got to go kill. But they're killing for their own inheritance. It's not like they was being zealous, overzealous, and just want to go conquer the world. The other nations do that. We never wanted to come outside of what the Most High gave us. And the Lord puts strict boundaries on what we could occupy. From this river to that river, that's yours. Don't go over there and take their land. Don't go over there and take their land. Don't go over there and take their land. I have divided up the nations and given everybody their inheritance, like it tells you in Deuteronomy 32:8, I believe, right? So the spirit that's in the nations causes them to want to go and do just that. Go into anybody else's land and conquer and take their land, right? And it's like, dang, like they showing favor to you. Like when Esau and them came over to what we now know the Americas, and they had people that was there, it was like, yo, you can dwell here. It's a lot of land. It's a whole lot of, you got land. If you fly, I fly frequently. When you fly up in the plane and you at an altitude where you can just look at the land, it's a lot of uninhabited land still in America. A whole lot. Right? It's acres and thousands of acres. I remember I had a clip, I hope I still have it in my email, of the handful of people. It's a handful of people that own the majority of the land that's in America, right? Handful of people of Edomite men that their families own a lot of the land in America. And so when you put that in perspective, you got a lot of cities. You got Miami and New York. It ain't like one guy that just owns the land in New York, right? It's broken up. But when you start really stretching out into the Midwest, into the Dakotas, into these plains, and it's people that own all that land. And ain't nothing on it. I'll be flying, seeing just acres and acres of just trees. I know, like the animals, Most High probably blessed them, right? That they ain't got to worry about Esau and them. They got acres and thousands of acres of just brush and just land that I know the deers and all these different Indians is in there living without no human beings troubling them. But this is a lot, and Esau came over here and said, "Nah, we want your, we want what you got. We want what you got, and you can't be here. We're going to kill some of you, and we're going to push y'all over there." Right? That's crazy, right? And this was something that they fell in on. So they didn't have the law to have that mentality on how to deal with other people. They didn't know boundaries. Esau don't know boundaries, right? We are given boundaries as far as for land and inheritance, as far as for how to deal with people. There's a boundary. There's a boundary what a man can do with a woman and what a man can do with the children and what a man parent could do. There's boundaries on all that that's determined in the law. When you don't have this, your boundaries are limitless. Do what you want, right? Think how you want to think, right? And it don't make sense. Just thinking about that, it doesn't make sense because you may have a boundary, and if you have that same concept that I can do what I want, well, what stops him from doing what he wants to you, right? If everybody don't have the same concept of a boundary and you think that I can do what I want, well, then what stops or prevents someone else from doing the same thing to you and say, "Hey, I like your house. I'm coming in the house and I'm going to sit in the doggone chair. You can't come in here. Why not? Because it's my house." So what? So what? That's how foolish that philosophy, that methodology is when it's do as thy wilt type concept. And I don't have to be bound by no rules or no laws. It makes no sense.
Even Israel and the Israelis and the Palestinians, they're constantly fighting one another for pieces of land, constantly, bulldozing over the Palestinians' houses and saying they're gonna set up shop and then decide to get blown up and all kind of stuff happening,
Con.
And Esau has no boundaries, right? Like with us, we are, as we read in Judges, we fighting for what's ours, what's rightfully ours,
right?
And that we restoring what's rightfully ours. That's what Judges is about,
right?
We give people their rights and give them what is rightfully theirs. That's why the Moses said, "Go and take that land."
Right.
But here's how you got to do it. Here's how you got to do it. You got to go here. You got to go there.
Right.
And you're gonna spy out the land and this and that because it's already yours anyway. But if you go there and you just show up, of course they ain't just gonna give up just like that. So you got to work different tactics. That's like lawyers do. To give you your rights, they got to go different hoops and they got to pull this law or that law, connect to this law. Then the decision is made. Yeah, it's yours. And it's the same thing that the Most High is doing with us here, but through fighting and get it.
Gun.
I had two things.
Gun.
Like when you said that Esau pushed the natives out, and then said, "Oh, you go over there. We want this land." Then they started putting in their railroads, and they come back and say, "No. We want this too. Y'all got to keep going on." But they live by no boundaries, and I got a link for 23, and Luz was Genesis 48:3 and 35:6.
Okay, so Genesis, we call them again?
Genesis 48:3.
48:3.
And 35:6.
And Genesis 35:6. Okay. 35:6, that's for Luz, the precept for Luz. All right, Kun. All right, so let's move on. So verse 25, right? It says, "And when he showed them the entrance into the city, they smote the city with the edge of the sword. But they let go the man and all his family." So they kept their word. They showed him mercy, right? It wasn't, speak with a double tongue, say one thing and do another, right? It says, "And the man went into the land of the Hittites and built a city and called the name thereof Luz, which is the name thereof unto this day." Check that out, right? So that goes into showing you how man names the land. So the place where they was at before was called Luz. But when the spies came and said, "Show us the city," they gave him the whole schematics, let him go. He went somewhere else. They went and conquered that land and renamed it something else. So now him being a Hittite, a Hamite, right, that they're conquering, well, they let him go. He went to another city and named the name of that city the same thing. So it's like it moved from here to over there. So somebody coming back, and if you was a Hamite that was out on the journey, you was away from somewhere, and you come back, and you're like, yo, who are these people in the land? Where's Luz at? And somebody like, you don't want to go there. That's not Luz. Luz over there. What you mean Luz over there? Luz is right here. Nah, these men done came and took the land. You ain't going in there no more. You might die. So they went somewhere else and called that name to be now as the former. Now, verse 27, it says, neither did Manasseh drive out the inhabitants of Beth Shean and her towns, nor Ta'anak and her towns, nor the inhabitants of Dor and her towns, nor the inhabitants of Ibleam and her towns, nor the inhabitants of Megiddo and her towns. But the Canaanites will dwell in that land. So you remember when we read before in the history, the Lord said that these nations would be what? Thorns and snares in our sides, right? So in the land, they conquering it, they owning it, they're possessing it, but they could never fully drive out these Hamitic nations from being there. And it would become a test to them to see if they would now either fall victim to making leagues and alliances and following after their practices and making marriages with them, or stick to the law, right? Again, the Most High was calculated in a manner of how to prove Israel, right? You prove yourself, any man or woman or whatever, you prove yourself based on experiences and circumstances, right? You test, right? You married now, you was promiscuous before, you was what they call a whoremonger, but now you're like, no, man, I'm leaving that alone. I'm leaving that alone. I ain't doing that no more, right? I'm gonna try to follow the Most High. I'm gonna be according to the scriptures. I'm gonna get a wife and deal with that, like it talks about in Corinthians 7th chapter. And all of a sudden you out and you see some voluptuous woman come by. And back in the day, you used to go and be promiscuous and be a whoremonger. And now it's like, nah, I ain't doing that. No, I ain't doing that. And you're like, all right, cool. And you think the battle's won. And all of a sudden, now she just walked by. Now all of a sudden she coming by, hey, how you doing? Now she's entertaining you and asking you a conversation, a question. You're like, oh, damn, why she come my way, man? Oh, now you really trying to fight off that old man, right? Or that old woman, because you got women who do the same type things of wanting to go out there and just play the field or take opportunity for a quick enjoyment. You got to say, no, I'm not doing that. I'm leaving that alone, right? So experiences and certain tests and temptations are put before you to prove if you are now abiding by what you say you abide by. And once you're able to conquer it, then you're like, all right, you won the battle. You're like, oh, I feel good, right? And then it builds your spirit up more and more. As more things you conquer, the more strength you now present into your body. And then Most High looking at Satan is like, you see him for quiet? You see what he did? It's, I don't know. And Satan is like, all right, well, let me do this. And then it just keep coming and keep coming, because as you mature more, the trials get more heftier, right? That's the key to understanding that.
And something to keep in mind, and it will always be there. Call it test, experience, affliction, opportunities. As long as you have a breath in you, it's gonna be there.
Yep.
So get used to it.
Yep. Was that in Peter's? I think it's First Peter's the 5th chapter. First Peter's chapter 5. First Peter chapter 4 and verse 12. Beloved, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial which is to try you, as though some strange thing happened unto you, right? First Peter's 4 and 12. Don't think that once you saying you about this, that it's a strange thing when stuff start happening to you. Should have expected it, right? Now that you leaving the comfort of the world and you trying to come over to the Most High side, you don't think that Satan, who now had a hold of you, is not going to try you to bring you back to his side? It's going to happen. So don't think that this is strange. You should be preparing yourself, right? You should be thinking about it. It's like buying a car. You get a nice car and you buy a nice car in a rough neighborhood. you in a neighborhood with Honda Civics, 84 Civics, 93 Hondas, this, that, and the third, and you come up you pull up in a 2013 Jaguar and you parking it right in the driveway. You better prepare yourself that people gonna ride by and see that car and be like, yo, what this truck over here with money? We got some. You better start getting you some locks, some cameras, some floodlights, some dogs, some guns, some whatever to protect yourself from what's about to happen, because they coming, right? So in the spirit, it's the same thing. Here it is. You done cleaned yourself up. You ain't dealing with that no more. And now here you in the belly of the beast, and you now walking with clean clothes on. Everybody else filthy. And they're like, yo, who this guy think he is coming out here with clean clothes, a clean spirit? I'm gonna get a whole bunch of them to try to come back over there and dirty him up, just like we dirtied up, right? I'm gonna try to get him. So you better think that that's coming. Prepare your mind for what's to come. Ariana.
Another link to go with that is 1 Corinthians 3:13.
1 Corinthians 3:13. Come.
Every man's work shall be made manifest, for the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by fire.
Mm-hmm.
And the fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is.
Come. Fire shall try every man's work. Everybody's work. Everybody's work that they're doing is going to be put to the test. No person is above the next. All right, let's read on. Back in Judges chapter 1, we at verse 28. It says, and it came to pass when Israel was strong that they put the Canaanites to tribute and did not utterly drive them out. So they were strong enough to make them start paying taxes, some form of tax or tribute, but couldn't fully eradicate them because they were just in strategic places where the Most High would not give us enough might to get them totally out. But in order to get what they needed to get, go where they needed to go, they had to pay tribute. They had to pay a tax. You want to cross over that bridge? You want to cross over this river to get here? You got to pay a tax. You got to bring something, right? You got to do that or else you're not coming here. So that's what the Most High allowed Israel to do at that time with the Canaanites. Verse 29. Neither did Ephraim drive out the Canaanites that dwelt in Gezer, but the Canaanites dwelt in Gezer among them. Neither did Zebulun drive out the inhabitants of Kitron, nor the inhabitants of Nahalol, but the Canaanites dwelt among them and became tributaries. So this is where, again, when we speak about Canaanites, it's talking about the land of Canaan, right? The overarching land became that name, but you had small tribes, the Kitronites and the Hittites and this, but they all was under that banner of being Canaan. And they were there, but they were all tributaries. Verse 31. Neither did Asher drive out the inhabitants of Akko, nor did the inhabitants of Zidon, nor of Ahab, of Elab, nor of Akzib, nor of Helba, nor of Athik, nor of Rehob, right? You read these names, you're like, man, these some crazy names, right? Because these are names of the lands at that time. And these names have meanings, right? The same way how we name lands because of certain events and they have a name, these names have a meaning. But like I said, the cross-reference, if you're a historian, you can go into other history books and get this name and give us a mystery that will rock the world. Like, yo, remember that name right there? It really was dealing with this, right? Verse 32. But the Asherites dwelt among the Canaanites, the inhabitants of the land, for they did not drive them out, right? So again, we were limited as to how far we can go. We're fully dwelling in the land by ourselves. Verse 33. Neither did Naphtali drive out the inhabitants of Beth Shemesh, nor the inhabitants of Beth Anath, but he dwelt among the Canaanites, the inhabitants of the land. Nevertheless, the inhabitants of Beth Shemesh and Beth Anath became tributaries unto them, being Naphtali. And the Amorites forced the children of Dan into the mountain, for they would not suffer them to come down to the valley, right? So here it is, Dan, which is one of the 12 at that time, We don't know who they are in these last days. We're not given that order to go and find Dan that we talked about in the class last night or this night. But when they were in their areas, the Amorites had a little bit control over them and forced them, as it says, into the mountain. It says they would not allow them to come down into the valley. So Dan, the Danites, was dwelling up in the mountain because of their opposition that they had with the Amorites. But now check this out. Verse 35, but the Amorites would dwell in Mount Heres and Aijalon and in Shaalbim. Yet the hand of the house of Joseph prevailed so that they became tributaries. So even though, they had a foothold on certain actual region where they were dwelling, Joseph was able to come up and conquer them to a degree where they forced them to become tributaries like the rest of the Canaanites, right? Tributaries meaning they had to pay some form of tax or pay or were obligated to bring in some type of products, right? It was trees or this or that, right? Because it wasn't always money, right? Based on the history that some of the Hamitic areas had good things that grew in them, and we made barters with them. So, a tribute might bring, you need to bring in that gold, that tree, or that herb, or that whatever every so often, right? Bring that in, and then y'all can go and get that, or get the water, or get this, and then it's cool. And they worked that out, and that's how it was. Verse 36, and the coast of the Amorites was from the going up to Akrabim, from the rock and upward. All right. So again, some of this is a rehashing of what went on in the past, just to bring it forward, so that as we move forward with what was going to happen with the judges that the Lord raised up, we have some context as to the current state of the land and inheritance. All right. So I know I have it up there, Judges 1 and 2, but we've gone on for about 2 hours, so we definitely want to take a break. Come back around 2:30 to do the second half. I'll try to be more expedient with it. Say again? 1:30? Come 1:30, not 2:30. Come back around 1:30. I'm looking at the time of how long we went. Come back around 1:30 to do the second half. So get a quick bite to eat, understanding the rules of the Sabbath, and we'll finish up, which is not too many verses. We'll finish up in the second half. So come back, most High's will, roughly in about 30 minutes. Shalom.